Imagine a moonlit sky above the shimmering Mediterranean Sea, the hum of an opulent yacht party echoing across tranquil waters. Guests in designer attire sip vintage champagne, completely unaware of the storm looming just beyond the harbor. A stunning woman, eyes blazing, steps onto the deck at precisely the wrong moment, or perhaps the right one. She's on a mission for truth, her heart a mix of fury and heartbreak. In a single dramatic instant, the world of a powerful millionaire, Jonathan Ashford, is about to come crashing down. The secrets, scandals, and ultimate downfall will leave everyone gasping for air. Jonathan Ashford was never meant to blend into the background. Born to middle-class parents in a quiet London suburb, he spent his childhood imagining a life of absolute grandeur. While his mates played football in dusty alleys, Jonathan devoured books on finance and success. At the age of 16, he told his bewildered father that he'd become a millionaire before he was 30. Of course, no one believed him until he turned 29 and unveiled an online real estate investment platform that skyrocketed his net worth practically overnight. His relentless ambition caught the eye of top investors, including the illustrious Robert Townsend, a veteran in the property game whose name was synonymous with prestige. Townsend introduced Jonathan to a circle of elite businessmen, each with their own corners of influence. Though it felt intoxicating to be in such powerful company, Jonathan's measured confidence and unwavering focus made him stand out. Within a year, he had forged partnerships that dwarfed his early success, and soon he was on the path to becoming one of Britain's youngest multimillionaires. But Jonathan's story wasn't just about financial success. He had charm, a confident stride, a disarming half-smile, and a sharp mind that could dissect a balance sheet in seconds. Most people who encountered him whispered about his uncanny ability to sense opportunity and exploit it to its fullest. Yet for all his skill in forging deals, one of his greatest achievements was convincing a woman named Helena Carpenter, a poised, elegant art curator from Oxford, to become his wife. Helena was unlike the usual women in Jonathan's orbit, where so many strove for glamour and recognition. Helena was more content to quietly immerse herself in canvases and sculptures. She could discuss 18th-century painters and modern graffiti artists with the same enthusiasm, and her refined sensibility balanced Jonathan's aggressive financial pursuits. If he was the strategic hustler chasing wealth and status in a cutthroat world, she was the refuge, calm, nurturing, and deeply intellectual. Their wedding was the talk of the season guests, sipped on 30-year-old Scotch and feasted on the most decadent French cuisine. The newlyweds were hailed as the perfect pair. She brought sophistication and compassion, and he brought ambition and wealth. That union seemed unstoppable, like two forces of nature entwined for greatness. However, beneath the dazzle and adoration, Helena's world was a quiet space of self-reflection. She had married Jonathan out of love, yes, but also out of fascination with his fierce determination. In turn, he admired her cultured worldview. Over time, her unwavering support gave him an incredible springboard to focus on bigger expansions, riskier investments, and all-consuming pursuits that devoured their time together. It was subtle at first. Jonathan would miss dinners, then anniversaries. The gentle hush of their Oxford flat turned into the distant hum of private jets and hotel rooms in New York, Milan, or Hong Kong. Helena, initially understanding, found herself increasingly isolated in her own home. And Jonathan, though he'd always showered her with luxurious gifts and heartfelt apologies, was too driven to notice the rift widening day by day. Still, Helena believed it was just a phase. Success like Jonathan's demanded sacrifices. He'll come around, she told herself. He loves me. And so she waited her faith in him, steadfast, hoping that once the dust of his booming career settled, they'd finally enjoy the stability and closeness she craved. It was a golden time until the facade began to crack. She couldn't pinpoint the exact moment it all changed, but she'd later recall small signs, the unfamiliar cologne wafting off his suits, the half-smudged lipstick mark on a shirt collar. He was too distracted to notice the suspicious texts that made his phone buzz late into the night. Red flags started popping up everywhere, planting seeds of doubt in Helena's mind. Though her heart pounded with suspicion, Helena told herself it was all in her head. Jonathan was simply a magnet for female attention. Success had a way of drawing admirers like moths to a flame. She tried to reassure herself that her husband was faithful, that he wouldn't risk their bond. She repeated it like a mantra whenever she felt unsettled. He wouldn't betray me. Yet those seeds of doubt quietly took root, and soon Helena's heart would lead her down a path of painful discovery. Their lives, once so perfectly aligned, were set on a collision course that would rock not only their marriage, but also the glittering empire Jonathan had so meticulously built. Helena's first inkling of real trouble came one morning when she checked their joint account. She hated prying into the finances. Jonathan always handled them, but the request for a major museum donation had landed on her plate as part of a philanthropic project she was coordinating. She needed to ensure the funds were there, and of course they should be, except the balance was unexpectedly low. Alarms rang in her mind. Where was all the money going? Jonathan regularly made large transactions for property deals, but he always informed Helena of big moves if only to keep her in the loop. This time, there had been no mention. No courtesy, heads up. She closed her laptop, heart thumping. She didn't want to overreact, but resolved to have a candid conversation with him that evening. That night, Jonathan breezed in late, but Helena found him in the study, his tie loosened, swirling a glass of whiskey. The usual shadows under his eyes seemed deeper, and the strain in his voice was evident as he greeted her. She gently broached the topic of the missing funds. His response was dismissive at best. Big expansion in Berlin, he said, not meeting her gaze. I'll have the details soon. Don't worry about it. He offered no further explanation, and Helena, not wanting to spark an argument, let the subject drop. But the anxiety gnawing at her only intensified. 2 days later, she received a call from an old friend, Joanna Pierce, who worked as an auction specialist. Joanna mentioned seeing Jonathan in a swanky restaurant with a stunning brunette, describing the scene as intimate. Helena's ears burned. She forced a laugh, telling Joanna she must be mistaken, but she could hardly keep her voice steady. He's got so many business associates, Helena rationalized. That must be it. A business dinner, nothing more. Yet that haunting feeling refused to subside. Helena decided to confide in an unexpected ally, Andy Harrington, Jonathan's close friend and business partner. Andy had been around since Jonathan's earliest days, and while his loyalties lay with Jonathan, he also cared for Helena like a sister. She caught him at the end of a gallery event and asked if he could spare a moment. They met at a quiet cafe near the gallery. Helena recounted her suspicions about the missing funds, the late-night phone calls, the rumors, and watched Andy's face turn grave. Look, Helena, I'd be lying if I said I haven't noticed a change in him, Andy confessed. He's distracted, takes calls at odd hours, steps out in the middle of negotiations. It's strange. But he paused, obviously, torn between honesty and loyalty to Jonathan. We don't have any proof, and Jonathan is known for making quick deals. Still, If you feel uneasy, maybe it's best you talk to him directly, or consider a private investigator." The conversation left Helena with a swirl of conflicting emotions. She hated the idea of spying on her husband, yet the fears in her mind refused to die. She could no longer fully trust Jonathan's evasive explanations, so she decided on a middle ground, an attempt at open communication one last time before taking a more drastic step. But that night, Jonathan came home later than ever, reeking of expensive perfume that definitely wasn't hers. When Helena gently prodded him for conversation, he brushed her off, saying he was exhausted. She noticed how he gingerly placed his phone face down on the nightstand. Her eyes flicked to it momentarily, and he caught her stare. Trying to read my messages now, he snapped an edge to his voice she hadn't heard before. She felt stung. "I just want to talk, Jonathan, and I just want to rest." He turned away from her, lights off, and that was that. The weight of her suspicions kept Helena awake, staring at the ceiling for hours. She realized, heart pounding with dread, that the man beside her was becoming a stranger. The next day, while Jonathan was out on business, Helena quietly called a private investigator, recommended by Andy. Someone discreet, a man named John Davis. She needed concrete answers for the sake of her sanity, if nothing else. John Davis was professional and kind, listening intently to Helena's concerns before agreeing to take on the case. "I'll find the truth," he told her gently, whatever it may be. Just be prepared for any possibility. For the next few weeks, Helena felt like she was living a double life. She smiled and attended her gallery events, politely feigned interest at dinner parties, and pretended nothing was amiss in her marriage. Meanwhile, John Davis sent her periodic text updates that made her heart thunder. Photographs of Jonathan heading into exclusive clubs with the same woman, bank statements referencing suspicious transfers, records of lavish gifts, jewelry designer handbags sent to an unknown address. It was real, her worst fears tangible and undeniable. Helena sat alone in her study, staring at proof of her husband's betrayal, tears streaking her cheeks. Her body felt numb, her mind roaring in disbelief. The man she had adored, the man who once said he'd do anything for her, was funneling money into an affair. In that moment, she felt an odd calm wash over her. She wasn't going to give in to despair, not yet. She would confront him on her own terms. She would gather her composure and face the truth. My marriage might be a lie, she thought. But I won't be a victim. 2 weeks after hiring the investigator, Helena's phone buzzed with an unexpected text from Jonathan Big Night. "Yacht party in the Mediterranean with potential investors. Be ready to leave by Thursday. No apologies for the last-minute notice, no courtesy to check her schedule. Just a command cold and impersonal." Helena felt a flicker of anger. Then John Davis contacted her with fresh intel. Jonathan was not only hosting a business gathering, but was rumored to bring along a special guest. The Mistress Clarissa Knight, an ex-model turned Instagram influencer with a dubious reputation for chasing wealthy men, would be in attendance. Documents showed that Jonathan had arranged a lavish suite for her. At the same time, he had neglected to mention this trip in any of his conversations with Helena. This was the last straw. Helena decided she would join him all right, but on her own terms. She would no longer remain in the dark. For years she had turned the other cheek, trusting him, making excuses for him. Now an undercurrent of quiet rage propelled her forward. She'd see the affair with her own eyes and decide her next move accordingly. On Thursday morning, she boarded the private plane in silence. Jonathan flashed her a perfunctory smile, barely making eye contact. As they settled into the plush leather seats, Helena studied him. He looked exhausted, yet oddly elated, as if anticipating something thrilling at the end of the journey. She clenched her fists, fighting the urge to confront him right then and there. But she wanted the truth, witnessed by the people who had always sung his praises, and possibly by Clarissa herself. The flight was painfully silent. Jonathan scrolled through his phone, occasionally letting out small chuckles as he texted someone. No doubt, Clarissa. Helena thought her stomach churning. She forced herself to look out the window, focusing on the cotton candy clouds and the infinite sky, wondering how her perfect life had spiraled into such a twisted mess. Upon landing in Nice, France, they were whisked away by a black limousine to the marina, where Jonathan's yacht, the Golden Dawn, was docked. Its gleaming exterior was a testament to his wealth, a pristine, three-decked spectacle that screamed opulence. Crew members in crisp uniforms helped Helena aboard, offering champagne and welcomes. She smiled politely, scanning the deck for any sign of Clarissa. None yet. Jonathan quickly excused himself, saying he had to finalize some logistics with the yacht's captain. That left Helena alone on the top deck, warm sun glistening off the azure water. She breathed in the sea breeze and let the tension in her shoulders momentarily ease. It struck her as bitterly ironic. This was supposed to be the lifestyle they had dreamed of, sharing exotic trips, luxurious parties, a life only a few could imagine. Yet standing here, she felt more alone than ever. Over the next few hours, guests poured in: business moguls from Berlin, socialites from London, a sprinkling of minor celebrities looking to latch onto the newest financial sensation. Helena recognized some faces from previous events, though the guest list seemed far more extravagant this time. Clinking glasses, polite laughter, and idle chatter set the stage for what Jonathan intended a brilliant show of wealth and power that would seal the next big deal. As night fell, the yacht set sail along the French Riviera. The party escalated, music pumping through hidden speakers, the dance floor filling with elegantly dressed attendees. Waiters circulated with hors d'oeuvres and champagne, and the entire upper deck shimmered under strings of fairy lights. It felt magical in a way, but for Helena, every glittering corner felt laced with lies. She watched Jonathan weave through the crowd, shaking hands, exchanging jokes, exuding the charm she once found irresistible. Then amidst the throng, Helena caught sight of a woman, tall, statuesque, with dark, flowing hair. She wore a sleek, figure-hugging gown that left little to the imagination. Helena's heart pounded. There was Clarissa Knight leaning in conspiratorially as Jonathan whispered something into her ear. It was unmistakable, the intimacy of their posture, the way Clarissa placed a manicured hand on his shoulder, the sly smiles they exchanged. For a moment, Helena's vision blurred with rage, tears threatening to spill. She steadied herself. This was her moment of truth, and she would not back down. She had endured enough lies and humiliations. With a deep breath, she navigated through the crowd, heading straight toward them. The hour of reckoning had arrived. The music was thunderous, reverberating through Helena's chest as she inched closer. Guests danced, swayed, and gossiped, but Helena's focus was narrowed to two people standing near the yacht's lavish, curved staircase, Jonathan and Clarissa. Her breathing became ragged, her pulse an unrelenting drumbeat in her ears. Jonathan, caught in mid-laugh, froze when he saw Helena closing in. Clarissa turned, glass in hand, eyebrows raised in mild curiosity. To the onlookers, Helena must have looked every bit the poised socialite, chin held high, posture elegant. But inside she was a tempest of hurt betrayal and anger. She stopped inches away from the pair. Jonathan found his voice first. "Helena," he said too brightly. I was just what? Helena cut him off, her voice low and trembling with restraint. Entertaining your investors, showing off your assets. Her gaze flicked to Clarissa, who gave a condescending smirk, as though Helena were an intruder at her own husband's party. Clarissa stepped forward, swirling her champagne. Is there a problem? She asked, her tone dripping with feigned innocence. Helena's jaw tightened. Yes, actually, she replied curtly. I'd like a word with my husband. Alone. By now, a few heads had turned curious about the brewing confrontation. Jonathan glanced around, clearly uncomfortable. He leaned in to whisper, Helena, don't do this here. His words ignited her fury. Don't do what? Address the fact that you've been funneling our money to finance your mistress's lifestyle, that you've lied to me, humiliated me, and dragged me onto this yacht to watch you two flaunt yourselves. At this, several nearby guests gasped or exchanged alarmed looks. The music continued, but a bubble of silence formed around them. Clarissa's smug expression faltered. Jonathan's face darkened. This was not the polished, controlled environment he cherished. This was chaos, and it was happening in front of potential investors, close friends, and curious onlookers. Helena. Lower your voice, Jonathan hissed, grabbing her arm. She yanked it free, adrenaline fueling her courage. No. I've been silent for too long, Jonathan. Tell them. Tell everyone here who Clarissa is to you. Clarissa let out a soft chuckle, stepping closer to Jonathan. Jonathan, darling, maybe you should calm your wife down. She seems hysterical. The words dripped with arrogance. Helena wheeled on Clarissa, her voice rising. If you think you're walking away unscathed, you're mistaken. You've waltzed into my marriage, played with my life as though it was some kind of social media spectacle. But I promise you this is one show you won't control. A hush fell over the deck. People parted like a tide, giving the trio space. Jonathan, typically so confident, looked cornered, desperate. He raised his voice, attempting to regain composure. Everyone, please, let's not ruin the evening. This is a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, Helena repeated, her eyes aflame. Is that what you call months of deception? I have the receipts, Jonathan. The private investigator's photos, the mysterious transactions, the hotel bills. Everything. She rummaged in her clutch, pulling out a small sheaf of papers. Care to explain these? She flung them at his feet. Clarissa eyed the papers warily, while Jonathan's face morphed from anger to something akin to panic. Onlookers craned their necks to see. Robert Townsend. Jonathan's esteemed investor stepped forward, a baffled expression on his face. Jonathan, what is she talking about? Helena's voice rang out, clear as a bell cutting through the music. Your golden boy here has been squandering our marital assets on an affair. And I, Helena Ashford, have had enough. She spun around to face Clarissa. And as for you, whatever hold you have on him, understand this. I'm not the meek wife you thought would just vanish. You're both accountable for this travesty. Tension vibrated through the crowd. Clarissa started to speak, but Jonathan silenced her with a cold glare. Instead, he tried to reason with Helena. Let's go somewhere private, talk it out. We can fix this. She stared at him, stunned by how effortlessly he glossed over the betrayal. Fix this. You can't fix something you've shattered beyond repair. Her eyes brimmed with tears, but her voice remained unwavering. Jonathan, I believed in us. I gave up so much for you. My time, my energy, my faith. I stood by you through every risky gamble. But this, she gestured to Clarissa and the decadent setting. This is unforgivable. The circle of guests tightened, some pulling out phones, capturing the confrontation. Helena didn't care. She wanted the world to see the real Jonathan Ashford, the man who valued image above all else, who would betray his wife and humiliate her in public without a shred of remorse. She took a step back, tears finally slipping down her cheeks. I won't be a part of your lie anymore. Enjoy your little party. Enjoy your mistress. Because by sunrise, I'm filing for divorce. That single word, divorce, rang out like a gunshot. Jonathan's face fell. Clarissa swallowed visibly, her bravado waning in the face of this public meltdown. In the stunned stillness that followed, Helena turned on her heel and marched away, head held high, her heart pounding like a war drum. Guests parted, giving her a wide berth as she walked. She could hear hushed whispers, felt the judgmental stares, but she refused to cower. Behind her, Jonathan called her name, but she did not turn. She felt the night air sting her tear-streaked face as she headed for her cabin. The show might be over for now, but the fallout was just beginning. In the aftermath of that explosive confrontation, Helena retreated to the privacy of her cabin, her body trembling with a whirlwind of emotions. She flicked on a soft lamp beside the bed and caught her reflection in the mirror. Mascara-smudged eyes, red-rimmed. She barely recognized the woman staring back at her. The party above deck carried on, albeit in a subdued fashion. The music no longer thundered. Instead, it played a polite background tune, as if attempting to pretend that nothing dramatic had happened. But Helena knew better. Everyone on that yacht would be abuzz with gossip. She could only imagine the rumors that would soon flood social media and tabloids. As she sank onto the bed, she took a moment to confront her emotions. Sorrow, anger, betrayal, and an odd sense of liberation. For so long, she'd been sleepwalking through her marriage, brushing aside suspicion and pain, wanting to preserve an image of the relationship she'd cherished. Now all illusions were shattered. She had laid bare Jonathan's betrayal in public, with no chance to take it back. A part of her felt oddly empowered. She had chosen truth over pretense. Her phone buzzed. A text from Andy Harrington. "Are you okay? I'm here if you need to talk." She replied with trembling fingers. "I'm fine. Thank you, Andy." She appreciated the concern, but she was far from fine. Still, she needed to be alone. Moments later, another knock came on her cabin door. She hesitated. Then gingerly she opened it, expecting to see Jonathan. Instead, there stood Robert Townsend, his distinguished silver hair, slightly disheveled concern, etched on his face. He gave a courteous nod. "Helena," he began softly. "May I come in?" She hesitated, but ultimately stepped aside. Robert entered, glancing around the cabin before settling on a nearby chair. Helena remained standing, arms crossed protectively. "I'm sorry to intrude," he said. "I just wanted to check on you." And he paused, swallowing. "I wanted to say that if what you said is true, well, let's just say I'm disappointed in Jonathan, on a personal and professional level." Helena eyed him warily. "I don't know what he's told you, Robert. But yes, it's all true. I hired a private investigator. I have proof." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I believe you, Helena. Jonathan's always been ambitious, but I never imagined he'd jeopardize everything. His marriage, his professional reputation like this." Her shoulders sagged in relief. Thank you for believing me. I understand you plan to file for divorce. She nodded, silent tears threatening again. I can't stay in this. I can't live a lie. Robert looked thoughtful. I respect that. Just know if you need any assistance, legal advice, or help back in England. I'll do what I can. Jonathan. Well, he and I have business ties, but that doesn't mean I condone what he's done. He paused, voice gentle. I'm truly sorry you had to go through this. Touched by his sincerity, Helena forced a weak smile. Thank you. He stood, patting her shoulder. Try to get some rest, Helena. Tomorrow this yacht will dock, and you can do what you need to. The next steps might be difficult, but you're stronger than you know. After Robert left, Helena locked the door, leaning against it for support. She stared at the scattered papers that had fallen from her purse documents, outlining Jonathan's deceit. So much evidence of a crumbled marriage. She picked them up and placed them neatly on a small table, telling herself that come morning, she'd figure out the logistics. For now, she needed sleep, a momentary escape from reality. But sleep wouldn't come easily. Her mind reeled with images, Jonathan whispering into Clarissa's ear, the horrified looks on their guests' faces, the heartbreak in her own reflection. She curled up on the bed, hugging a pillow. In time, exhaustion won out, and she drifted into a restless slumber. The next morning brought a cold clarity. The yacht had docked in Monte Carlo. Helena woke up groggy and unprepared for the day, but resolved to leave as soon as possible. She stepped out of the cabin, luggage in hand, and was startled to find Jonathan waiting in the corridor, shadows under his eyes telling her he'd probably slept no better than she had. He raised a hand in a placating gesture. Helena, please, let's talk. Her throat tightened. We talked enough last night, Jonathan. I'm done. He grimaced. I know I messed up all right. I was stupid, reckless. But we can figure this out. You don't have to. She bristled, voice cracking with anger and hurt. Don't tell me what I have to do. Do you know how humiliating it was to find out from a third party that my husband is cheating, to realize half our money is going to some woman I've never met, to stand on that deck last night and confront you in front of everyone? She shook her head, tears brimming. I can't forgive that. Not anymore. He stepped closer, but she retreated. Helena, I regret it. I was caught up in the thrill, the image, the ego. I never meant to hurt you like this. She gave a humorless laugh, tears spilling over. Is that supposed to make me feel better? Because it doesn't. Behind them, the corridor was empty, and the hush felt oppressively claustrophobic. She brushed past him, resolute. Goodbye, Jonathan. I'm leaving. She didn't wait for a response, storming down the hallway and onto the deck. The sun was blazing over Monte Carlo's lavish skyline, but Helena barely noticed. She felt hollowed out, as though the very foundation of her life had crumbled. Yet amid the devastation, she detected a faint spark of resilience. She was free from illusions, free from compromise. What happened next was up to her. Without a backward glance, she departed the yacht. Each step onto the solid ground felt simultaneously agonizing and liberating. She was alone in a foreign city, weighed down by emotional wreckage, yet unburdened by lies. And though the road ahead was uncertain, Helena knew one thing for sure. She would rebuild with or without Jonathan Ashford. Helena secured a suite at a 5-star hotel in Monte Carlo. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was using the fortune built upon Jonathan's success to distance herself from him. As she slipped into the plush bed that evening, staring at the opulent ceiling, she felt torn between heartbreak and grim determination. She knew what needed to be done. The marriage was over. Now came the legal battle. The next day, Helena was bombarded with calls and texts, some from concerned friends, others from nosy acquaintances fishing for scandal. Even the press had gotten wind of the dramatic confrontation on the yacht, with tabloids printing sensational headlines: "Mogul's wife exposes infidelity at $1 million soiree." She ignored them all, focusing on a single mission, taking control of her life and the assets that rightfully belonged to her. She reached out to a top-tier divorce attorney, Maria Quinn, someone recommended by Robert Townsend. Maria, a sharp-witted woman with a reputation for playing hardball, wasted no time. Over a series of Zoom calls and document exchanges, they prepared the necessary legal paperwork. Maria cautioned Helena that Jonathan would likely try to settle quickly. His public image would be at stake. Indeed, just 3 days later, Helena received a frantic call from Jonathan. She hesitated before answering, but curiosity got the better of her. "Helena," he said, voice tense, "the tabloids are going insane. Investors are questioning my judgment. Let's handle this quietly. I'm prepared to offer a fair settlement." She was silent for a moment, feeling the swirl of conflicting emotions. She recalled the times they laughed together, supported each other, built a life. But she also remembered Clarissa's smug face, the lies, the betrayal. "That's not for you to decide alone, Jonathan," she finally replied, voice even. "Talk to my lawyer." He sighed, exasperated. "Why are you doing this so publicly?" "Think about your reputation." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "My reputation. You should have thought about that before you started flaunting your affair. Don't try to guilt-trip me. This is on you." She ended the call, heart hammering. She sat there, phone in hand, until the screen went dark. This was real. The illusions of marital bliss were gone, replaced by a steely resolve. Meanwhile, Monte Carlo proved a surprisingly peaceful place to process her pain. Between legal consultations, Helena found solace in long walks by the marina, letting the sea breeze clear her mind. The sparkle of the Mediterranean reminded her that life could still hold beauty, even when one's heart was wounded. Days turned into a week. Helena's lawyer and Jonathan's team exchanged countless emails, eventually hammering out a preliminary settlement. Jonathan wanted to keep the scandal contained. Helena simply wanted her due and a clean break. However, just as the negotiations seemed close to a resolution, Helena received an unexpected visitor in her hotel lobby, Clarissa Knight. Helena almost did a double take when she saw Clarissa striding across the polished marble floor. The woman looked glamorous as always, clad in designer sunglasses and a chic black dress. She approached with a click of her high heels, a predatory feline grace in her stride. "I'd like to speak with you," Clarissa said, removing her sunglasses. Helena studied her, taking in the flawless makeup and confident posture. What could we possibly have to say to each other? Clarissa's smile was icy. "Oh, a lot. You see, Jonathan and I are done." She shrugged nonchalantly. "He's lost everything, his dignity, public favor, and soon a chunk of his fortune. He's not the man I thought he was." Helena felt a wave of disgust. "So you came here to gloat, or to rub it in my face that you had him first?" Clarissa shook her head, hair swishing elegantly. "I don't care about him anymore. But I do care about my reputation. This entire fiasco has labeled me a home wrecker, and your display on that yacht. It was quite the spectacle. You took me by surprise." She tilted her head, a glint in her eye. "I respect that. Helena stiffened, taken aback by the unexpected compliment. I don't need your respect. You're the one who walked into my marriage knowingly. Clarissa shrugged again. Jonathan told me you were practically separated, that your relationship was loveless. I believed him, and yes, I was looking for a powerful partner. I've never denied that. But it seems we were both deceived by Jonathan in different ways. Helena crossed her arms. So what do you want? Clarissa let out a slow breath. Look, as far as I'm concerned, Jonathan Ashford is a sinking ship. I'm off to find my next opportunity. But I wanted to say this to your face: you deserved better than him. And from one woman to another, I'm sorry. The apology hung in the air, fragile and unexpected. Helena wasn't sure whether to believe it, but she sensed a hint of sincerity in Clarissa's guarded gaze. She nodded stiffly. I won't forgive you, but I can appreciate your honesty now. Clarissa placed her sunglasses back on her polished mask of confidence, sliding into place. Take care of yourself, Helena. If you're half as strong as you were on that yacht, you'll come out of this just fine. And with that, Clarissa turned and strutted out of the lobby, leaving Helena to ponder the bizarre conversation. In a twisted way, the meeting gave her closure. She realized she was truly done with Jonathan's circus of deceit, and she was ready for the next phase of her life on her own terms. Back in London, Helena stepped off the plane with mixed emotions. The city that once felt like home now felt alien. She was returning not as Jonathan Ashford's wife, but as the woman who publicly cast him aside. She pulled her coat tighter around her, the familiar chill biting at her cheeks. Within hours, she was sitting in the office of Maria Quinn, finalizing divorce documents. It turned out Jonathan was indeed eager to settle. His public image had taken a battering, and he didn't want a protracted legal war. Helena had insisted on a fair share of their jointly accrued assets, plus a sizable compensation for the betrayal and misconduct. Maria assured her they had a strong case, and the negotiations proceeded swiftly. During a brief recess in the meeting with Jonathan's legal team, Helena found herself alone in the hallway with her soon-to-be ex-husband. He looked thinner, more haggard, his usual polished veneer cracked. For a fleeting moment, she pitied him. Are you really sure there's no going back? Jonathan asked softly. Hands shoved into his suit pockets. Helena exhaled slowly. This isn't about me being stubborn. You betrayed me, Jonathan. You broke every vow we made. There's no trust left. He lowered his gaze, silent. She could see regret flickering in his eyes, but it was too little, too late. The final round of paperwork took less than an hour. Jonathan signed with a shaky hand, as though physically affected by the gravity of this moment. Helena felt oddly calm, each signature bringing her a step closer to independence. At the last flick of her pen, it was done. They were strangers with a legal contract severing their ties. Walking out of the law firm's towering building, Helena inhaled the crisp London air. The city was ablaze with midday bustled taxis, red double-deckers, and rushing crowds. She felt an overwhelming sense of relief, interspersed with a pang of sadness. This was the end of one chapter, and the uncertain beginning of another. She met Andy Harrington for coffee that afternoon. He gave her a warm hug. So, it's official. She managed a soft smile. Yes, we're divorced. They found a corner table by the window. Andy, never one for small talk, jumped straight to the point. I've severed my business ties with Jonathan, too, he admitted. Couldn't continue after everything that happened. Plus, our major investors lost faith in him. I've gone independent, focusing on smaller ventures. It's better for my conscience. Helena nodded, sipping her latte. I appreciate that, Andy. I'm sorry you lost a friend in all this. He shook his head. He's the one who chose this path. Don't apologize. Then he looked at her kindly. What about you? Any plans for the future? She mulled over the question. For so long her identity had been tied to Jonathan, his career, his ambitions, his life. But now she realized she had the means and freedom to pursue her own dreams. I think I'll expand my work in the art world. Maybe open my own gallery. She paused, eyes sparkling with newfound determination. I have the connections, the capital, and it's something I've always been passionate about. Andy grinned. That sounds perfect. If you need any business advice, I'm here. She smiled in return. Thank you. In the following weeks, Helena took the first steps toward building her new enterprise. She scouted potential locations, consulted with curators and artists she respected, and found herself immersed in the creative world she'd adored since her youth. The energy of creation and curation replaced the gloom of betrayal. Occasionally, she'd catch mention of Jonathan in passing. The tabloids teased stories about him relocating to New York, trying to rebuild his empire in the States. She never bothered to read the full articles. His life was no longer her concern. And yes, there were times when loneliness struck. Late nights in her new flat, the city lights twinkling outside, she'd remember simpler moments with Jonathan. Lazy Sundays, shared jokes, supportive hugs before big events. She'd wonder how it all went so wrong. But then she would remind herself of the lies, the affair, and the heartbreak. The man she once loved had shattered her trust beyond repair. Amid this emotional turbulence, she found small joys like choosing furniture for her new living space, discovering unique art pieces, and forming fresh friendships. She began volunteering at local art programs for underprivileged youth, channeling her pain into helping others find beauty and expression. Day by day, she healed, rediscovering her sense of self-worth. It wasn't an easy journey, but Helena learned that real strength often blossoms in the aftermath of heartbreak. She discovered that while money and status can offer comfort, they can't replace honesty, respect, and true partnership in a relationship. And most importantly, she learned to trust herself again, a gift she never expected to find in the ruins of her marriage. 6 months later, Helena stood in the center of a spacious, light-filled gallery in the heart of London's artistic district. Canvases adorned the pristine white walls, showcasing works by emerging talents she had personally discovered. The gallery's soft opening was underway, and a respectable crowd had gathered to appreciate the art nibble on hors d'oeuvres and raise glasses of bubbly. Dressed in a simple yet elegant black sheath dress, Helena floated from one guest to another, exuding calm confidence. She stopped to chat with a young painter named Sophia Park, whose bold, abstract pieces were garnering attention. Sophia was beaming, and Helena felt a surge of pride, remembering how nervous the artist had been just a few weeks prior. "You were right, Helena," Sophia said, eyes shining. "This exposure is life-changing." Helena squeezed her shoulder affectionately. "Your talent speaks for itself, Sophia. I'm just happy to help shine a light on it." The evening felt surreal. She recalled how a year ago her life had revolved around Jonathan's scheduled social events, catered to his business associates, and an unspoken tension that gnawed at her whenever he was absent for too long. Now she was standing in her own space, surrounded by people who admired her vision, not her husband's fortune. The difference was liberating. Around 7 o'clock, she spotted a familiar face, Robert Townsend, her former father-in-law figure in business, waving politely. She walked over, greeting him with genuine warmth. "Robert?" "I'm honored you came," she said, offering him a handshake. He smiled, returning her handshake with a gentle squeeze. "I wouldn't miss it. Heard so much buzz about your new gallery. And, well, I'm proud of you, Helena." She felt her cheeks flush slightly. "Thank you. That means a lot coming from you." They strolled through the exhibit together, discussing art and business, but carefully skirting the topic of Jonathan. Eventually, though, Robert cleared his throat. "I've had minimal contact with Jonathan lately. Well, let's just say he's struggling. The press in New York is relentless, and potential partners are wary of him after the scandal." Helena nodded, a pang of sympathy stirring in her chest despite everything. "I can imagine," she said quietly. "It's unfortunate that he couldn't see the value of integrity before it was too late." Robert sighed. "Indeed. But let's not dampen the mood. This is your night." He raised his glass in a small toast. "To new beginnings." She clinked her glass against his, feeling a genuine sense of gratitude. To new beginnings. As the evening wore on, Helena mingled with guests, delighting in the glowing compliments for the exhibit. At one point, she found herself at the refreshment table refilling a glass of champagne when Andy approached. He looked dapper in a charcoal suit, an excited grin lighting up his face. "The place is buzzing," he said, giving her a playful nudge. "Sold 2 pieces already, I hear." Helena laughed softly, a musical sound. "Yes, can you believe it? People are actually investing in these rising talents. It's exactly what I wanted to give them the chance they deserve." Andy toasted her. "Well, you're doing it. Helena Ashford, the art mogul in the making." She waved him off with a smile. "Let's not go that far. But I do feel fulfilled. Like for the first time, I'm doing something that aligns with who I am, not who I was trying to be for someone else." Andy's gaze was empathetic. "I'm proud of you. And if Jonathan could see you now." She cut him off gently. "He had his chance, Andy. Let's leave it at that." The two exchanged a look of mutual understanding. The name Jonathan now felt like a relic from another life, a reminder of how far she had come. By the time the event wound down, Helena stood by the gallery doors, thanking each guest for attending. Her feet ached, her voice was hoarse from hours of conversation, but her spirit was light. When the last attendee left, Helena turned off the lights, except for a single spotlight illuminating a painting near the entrance, a stunning portrait of a woman standing alone at the edge of a cliff, gazing at a fiery sunset. The painting resonated with her journey, the promise of something radiant beyond the horizon, discovered only after a painful precipice. She let out a deep breath and allowed the quiet of the gallery to envelop her. The echoes of the night's laughter and conversations lingered in the air. She felt a sense of peace, an unshakable certainty that she had made the right choices, no matter how painful they had been. Yes, she had lost a marriage, but she had gained herself in the process. The world had witnessed her heartbreak, but they also bore witness to her resilience, her rebirth. As she left the gallery, locking the door behind her, Helena gazed up at the moonlit London sky. In that silent moment, she embraced the truth. Happiness, genuine happiness, was within her reach, and she was well on her way to claiming it. Rumors continued to swirl about Helena's dramatic divorce and blossoming art career, so after much deliberation, she decided to release a public statement. Her lawyer suggested it might help quell the incessant media chatter and give Helena the final word on the matter. A week after the gallery opening, Helena sat down at her desk, opened her laptop, and stared at the blinking cursor. She refused to hire a publicist to craft her statement. This was her voice, her truth, and she would speak from the heart. To those interested in my personal life, I would like to confirm that Jonathan Ashford and I have finalized our divorce. The decision was made after a period of significant personal distress and betrayal, and while it was painful, it was ultimately necessary. I appreciate those who have reached out with kind words and support. Our paths have diverged, and I choose to move forward in a way that brings me fulfillment and peace. I am focusing on my passion for art and the nurturing of emerging talents in the creative industry. My new gallery represents not just a professional venture, but a personal renaissance. I believe in second chances. Sometimes we give them to ourselves. I urge respect for my privacy and that of Jonathan Ashford. We have each borne the repercussions of our choices. Life moves on, and so do we. Thank you for understanding. She read it over tears prickling her eyes at the memories evoked by the words. It was honest, concise, and gracious. She sent it to her lawyer, who approved immediately, and then released it through her social media channels and a few major publications. Predictably, tabloids tried to spin it, but she felt a sense of closure nonetheless. Messages of support poured in, friends from her university days, old colleagues, even strangers who had watched the scandal unfold and related to her strength. Helena's phone buzzed non-stop, but she chose not to respond to every well-wisher. She appreciated the empathy, but wanted her life to remain private. Jonathan, predictably, was nowhere to be found. Rumor had it he was holed up in Manhattan trying to salvage what was left of his empire. She wondered if he saw her statement, if he felt regret or remorse. But those questions no longer haunted her. She had drawn her line in the sand, and there was no going back. In a final act of release, Helena took the wedding photos along with the fancy gifts Jonathan had given her over the years, expensive watches, diamond earrings, and the like, and carefully packed them into a box. She didn't throw them away, but locked them away in storage. They were remnants of a different era, a chapter concluded. She had no desire to revisit that story, at least not for a long while. By the time she secured the last piece of tape on the box, she felt lighter. The final vestiges of her marriage were tucked away, making space for the woman she was becoming. Standing before the sealed memories, she thought of Clarissa's parting words. You deserved better than him. She understood now that the better she deserved was not necessarily another person, but a better version of herself, free from lies and full of hope. She closed the storage unit, turned the key in the lock, and walked away with measured strides. In her heart, a quiet certainty blossomed. The future was bright, and she was ready for it. Helena's journey over the following months was one of rebuilding and self-discovery. Her gallery thrived, quickly gaining traction as a hub for fresh avant-garde talent. Critically acclaimed art blogs praised her keen eye for undiscovered genius. A swirl of new artists reached out, hoping for a chance to exhibit under Helena's curatorial guidance. But it wasn't just her professional life that flourished. Helena reconnected with old friends she had lost touch with during her marriage's roller coaster. She spent evenings hosting intimate dinner parties, filled with laughter and intellectual debate, rather than the stiff soirees that once characterized her social circle. She traveled to art festivals in Venice and Berlin, not to follow Jonathan on business, but to indulge her passion for creativity. In every corner of her life, she found renewal and purpose. One afternoon, as she strolled through Hyde Park, the sun warm on her face, Helena felt a subtle shift within her. She had been on her own for close to a year now. No secrets, no illusions, just a raw, honest existence. And while the memory of Jonathan's betrayal still stung, it no longer defined her. She was free to envision a future not limited by the constraints of who she had been in that marriage. Her mind wandered to the concept of trust. Could she ever truly trust again? The thought was daunting, but not impossible. She considered that perhaps real trust begins within oneself. She now trusted her own judgment, her instincts and morals, which had become sharper through the trials she endured. Maybe that was enough for now. A chance meeting at a charity function one evening would test that theory. Dr. Michael Shaw, a philanthropist who specialized in humanitarian causes, introduced himself while they both admired a silent auction painting. His tall frame and approachable demeanor put her at ease. He asked thoughtful questions about her gallery, and she found herself genuinely intrigued by his work providing medical relief in impoverished regions. They spent half the evening engrossed in conversation discussing art, philanthropy, and travel. Helena felt a spark of excitement she hadn't experienced in years. A flutter in her stomach she'd almost forgotten. At the end of the night, Michael politely asked if they could continue the conversation over dinner sometime. She hesitated, a flicker of caution telling her to be wary of stepping back into the chaos of a romantic entanglement. Yet as she looked into his earnest eyes, she sensed no hidden agenda or arrogance, qualities she had come to despise in the circles she once inhabited. So with a heart steady yet open, she said yes. Their first date was casual coffee at a quaint bookstore, followed by a stroll along the Thames. He spoke passionately about his medical missions, while she shared anecdotes of discovering raw talent in unexpected corners of the world. It felt refreshingly real. No flashy displays of wealth, no power plays, just two individuals connecting over shared ideals. Helena returned home that evening, feeling a strange mix of elation and fear. Elation because she felt hope stirring for a new connection. Fear because she still bore scars from her past. Yet in the stillness of her chic apartment, she reminded herself she was no longer the woman who would allow herself to be overshadowed or deceived. She had evolved, found her voice, and refused to settle for anything less than genuine respect and authenticity. Day by day, as she got to know Michael, she realized that perhaps healing wasn't just about locking the past away, but allowing herself the freedom to create new memories. It was a risk, a leap of faith, really, but wasn't that what art, love and life were all about? She closed her eyes and smiled, envisioning the next sunrise. The future, once murky and fraught with pain, now beckoned with a soft, hopeful glow. The horizon was hers to explore, and she intended to savor every moment. Thank you for joining me on this emotional roller coaster of heartbreak, redemption, and self-discovery. Helena's journey reminds us that life's darkest chapters can spark the brightest new beginnings, and that no betrayal or heartbreak can truly extinguish our inner light. If this story resonated with you, if it inspired you to find strength in your own struggles, or reminded you of the power of standing up for yourself, then I invite you to become part of this community. Like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe for more compelling stories that explore the resilience of the human spirit. Turn on your notifications so you never miss an upload, because here we delve into the raw, real, and inspiring moments that shape us. Remember, your journey isn't over when you stumble. It's just beginning when you stand back up. Stay brave, and see you in the next video.
Millionaire hid from his pregnant wife for 10 years, but when she finally called, he trembled all over. Rebecca Harrington once led an enviable life, wealthy husband, sophisticated soirees, and a sprawling home in the heart of Manhattan. But when her marriage to millionaire magnate Thomas Harrington fell apart, everyone assumed she'd left empty-handed. Even Thomas believed his ex-wife was struggling after their high-profile divorce. That is, until an unexpected reunion brought him face to face with the hidden opulence. Rebecca had built all on her own. Old emotions flared, secrets unraveled, and the line between bitterness and longing blurred. As Thomas stood before her lavish estate, he realized that everything he thought he knew about Rebecca and the life she'd been living was about to be turned upside down. Thomas Harrington hailed from old money. His father, Gregory Harrington, built a global chain of luxury hotels, and by the time Thomas was in college, he'd inherited a trust fund that could finance any whim. Tall, suave, and charismatic, he swept into high society gatherings like a seasoned star. People whispered that he was set to double his family fortune with bold ventures. Rebecca Nicholson later, Harrington came from comparatively modest beginnings. She met Thomas at a charity ball where she volunteered for the Books for Kids Foundation. Surrounded by glitzy donors in ball gowns and tuxedos, she looked out of place in her understated blue dress. Yet her serenity, her genuine smile, caught Thomas's attention amidst the sea of artificial glamour. Their courtship was whirlwind. Lavish dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants, weekends in Monaco, midnight walks by Central Park's shimmering lake. Thomas introduced Rebecca to an opulent world she'd only read about in magazines. Despite her amazement, she remained grounded, occasionally surprising Thomas with her refusal to accept extravagant gifts. Their wedding was the culmination of their improbable love story, a grand ceremony at the Harrington family's ancestral mansion. Celebrities, media moguls, and influential politicians filled the marble-floored ballroom. To the outside world, they were a fairy tale couple. Regal photos from the event graced every major gossip column for weeks. But as the confetti settled and they returned from a Caribbean honeymoon, both began to sense an unsettling truth. Real love doesn't hinge on wealth, but on deeper connections that money cannot buy. And the cracks in their fairy tale were already beginning to show. Rebecca initially tried to mold herself into Thomas's high society lifestyle. She accompanied him to black-tie charity galas, foreign investors' dinners, and Harrington family gatherings that often felt more like corporate board meetings than cozy get-togethers. Although she carried herself with grace, she sometimes felt lost in a torrent of superficial chatter about hedge funds and inheritance strategies. Thomas didn't notice at first. He was consumed by the demands of the Harrington empire, attending openings of new hotel branches, negotiating major expansions, and hosting lavish events. In his mind, Rebecca was thriving as Miss S. Harrington, the adored hostess for some of Manhattan's most exclusive parties. Meanwhile, behind her warm smiles, a sense of emptiness grew. At times, Rebecca confided in her old friend, Lisa Nguyen, whom she had known since college. Over coffee in a modest cafe far from the glaring city lights, she'd whisper, "I feel like an actress in a role I never auditioned for. Thomas is sweet, but everything in his life is so orchestrated." Lisa would offer comfort, but even she admitted that bridging the gap between two drastically different worlds wasn't easy. An event one evening sealed Rebecca's unease. During a high-profile fundraiser for an arts institution, Thomas joked to a group of elite patrons that Rebecca's success story is only possible because I rescued her from working-class drudgery. The crowd laughed, but Rebecca's heart sank. She realized that in Thomas's eyes, she might always be the girl he elevated, rather than an equal partner. Though Thomas's remark had been casual and not meant to wound, it exposed a hidden truth. The cracks in their marriage were deepening. Money, power, and reputation were overshadowing the simple affection they once shared. Soon, they would each realize that an expensive facade can only conceal so much for so long. As the months passed, more instances highlighted the disconnect between them. Rebecca, longed for simpler weekends, walking hand in hand through museums, sharing homemade meals, or visiting her parents in upstate Albany. But Thomas preferred indulging in exclusive clubs, rubbing shoulders with potential investors, or traveling to exotic locales for business negotiations. Arguments ensued. They began as minor disagreements, her frustration about missing a friend's birthday for a boardroom dinner, or his annoyance at her lack of interest in the Harrington brand's expansion. Each dispute ended with no real resolution. After all, Thomas believed providing a life of luxury proved his devotion. To him, that was love. Meanwhile, Rebecca just wanted genuine closeness, not a never-ending performance in high society. Growing tensions bubbled over one evening after a family dinner at the Harrington mansion. Thomas's mother, Camilla Harrington, made an offhand comment comparing Rebecca's table manners to those of the blue-blooded wives in their circle. Rebecca retorted, pointing out that not everyone worshipped at the altar of status. The argument escalated, culminating in Thomas siding with his mother out of habit. The ride back to their penthouse was steeped in stony silence. Within days, divorce rumors permeated the hush of their social scene. Friends whispered that Thomas's pride had been wounded and that Rebecca was ungrateful. Others quietly championed Rebecca, admiring her for not bending under relentless pressure. For the first time, the Harrington name was associated with conflict, not wealth or success. The final straw arrived on a winter night when a vicious argument led to both of them flinging angry words they couldn't retract. In the midst of tears and regret, they realized that the once romantic vows had dissolved into an irreparable verdict. Their marriage had unraveled beyond repair. The divorce was swift, orchestrated by Thomas's high-powered legal team. Harrington attorneys descended like hawks, determined to protect the family's fortune. Despite the outward appearance of civility where Thomas insisted, "I'll ensure she's well taken care of," the actual negotiations revealed a different story. In private, Rebecca faced a barrage of stifling demands. The Harrington lawyers implied that she had no rightful claim to major assets. They proposed a meager settlement compared to the scale of the Harrington wealth. Their subtle intimidation tactics ranged from reminders of the Harrington family's influence to the mention of non-disclosure clauses that threatened her if she ever tarnished the family's name. At first, Rebecca was tempted to fight. She felt anger coil within her, outraged at the suggestion that her contributions to the marriage amounted to so little. But she hesitated. Engaging in a lengthy court battle promised endless headlines in gossip rags and a drawn-out emotional toll. More than anything, she wanted to move on and begin healing from the heartbreak. In the end, a compromise was reached, a moderate financial package, along with some personal belongings dear to Rebecca, like her mother's heirloom brooch and a few pieces of artwork she loved. Once the divorce papers were signed, she left quietly, refusing to feed the tabloids' frenzy. Thomas, for his part, believed he had been fair, even generous, though a faint guilt flickered somewhere beneath his outward composure. Overnight, Rebecca vanished from the social circle she once flitted through, stepping out of the Harrington shadow. She took her personal check, a fraction of what the media assumed she'd walk away with, and faded from Manhattan's high society scene, leaving onlookers to assume she was struggling, perhaps even ruined. No one, including Thomas, bothered to question the truth of that assumption. With the divorce settlement in her bank account, Rebecca faced a future she both dreaded and welcomed. The check might have been modest in the Harrington universe, but it provided a temporary cushion. More importantly, it gave her autonomy. She contemplated leaving New York entirely, heading to Europe, or returning to Albany to be near her parents. But a quiet resolve emerged. She would build a new life on her own terms, within a realm that none of the Harrington clan could taint. She rented a small studio apartment in Brooklyn, a far cry from the posh penthouse she once shared with Thomas. However, the place had a charm that made her feel safe. Simple and cozy, it allowed her the space to recollect her thoughts. She found solace walking through local farmers' markets, reading in hidden cafes, and exploring art galleries whenever she needed inspiration. Determined to bury the heartbreak, Rebecca channeled her energy into a freelance project, a small-scale interior design consultancy, something she'd always dreamed of pursuing. Before her marriage, she'd studied design part-time and often decorated her friends' apartments. Now, freed from the Harrington name, she was free to develop her own brand. She built a portfolio, reached out to old acquaintances, and slowly found her first clients among middle-class families renovating lofts or new graduates decorating micro-studios. Yet, behind her quiet independence, an ember of pain still glowed. Sometimes she'd catch herself glancing at old photos, her wedding day, a radiant smile on her face, or a holiday snap from a yacht trip Thomas organized. Late at night, regret whispered, maybe we could have tried harder. But every morning, the memory of those final arguments reminded her that letting go had been her only chance at peace. Nothing about her new life was easy, but at least it was hers. Little did she know how drastically her fortunes were about to evolve, or how the narrative of poor, struggling ex-wife would soon turn on its head. Several months into her freelance design venture, Rebecca received a call from Samantha Evans, a socialite turned philanthropist she'd once met at a Harrington gala. Samantha's voice sounded unexpectedly warm. "I heard you've been branching into interior design," she said. "I have a project that might interest you." Curious, Rebecca agreed to meet Samantha at a nearly completed brownstone in Chelsea. The property boasted crisp lines, large bay windows, and a blank canvas interior. Samantha, newly remarried to a tech entrepreneur, planned to open the space as a transitional housing project for young women leaving difficult home situations. The budget for decor, while not extravagant, offered creative freedom. As they toured the space, Samantha confided, "I never liked how the Harrington Circle treated you. I saw how they dismissed your ideas and overshadowed your talents. I've always admired your sense of style. That's why I want you to design this place, to give you a chance to shine." Tears of gratitude welled in Rebecca's eyes. She recognized Samantha's empathy was genuine, not just superficial pity. Buoyed by this new ally, she dived into the project with vigor. She sketched out concepts that balanced comfort and modern aesthetics, scoured local artisans for custom furnishings, and oversaw the final touches. While she was meticulous, she also poured her heart into making it feel like a welcoming haven. The collaboration proved a success. Samantha praised Rebecca's work to everyone in her network, leading to multiple new projects. Soon, a trickle of clients became a steady stream, each contract fueling Rebecca's ambitions. With each completed design, her confidence soared. Little did she know that these early triumphs were merely stepping stones toward an opportunity far greater than she ever dared to imagine, and that somewhere, well beyond her line of sight, destiny was weaving an unexpected turn in her life story. While Rebecca built her reputation quietly, the rumor mill in Manhattan's elite circles continued to churn. A few socialites whispered that Rebecca Nicholson Harrington had sunk into obscurity or was barely making ends meet. Gossip columns occasionally mentioned her in passing, describing her as the ex-wife who walked away from millions. Even Thomas himself, when asked about her, hinted that she'd lost out by rejecting a comfortable post-divorce arrangement. Their circle smugly concluded that she must be scraping by. Yet, behind the scenes, a different narrative was unfolding. Word of Rebecca's successful design work trickled through more philanthropic channels, rarely intersecting with the Harrington empire. Samantha Evans introduced her to a few well-connected donors, praising her creative flair and resourcefulness. One of these donors, the respected investor Jonathan Maxwell, was so impressed he commissioned Rebecca to revamp a newly purchased boutique hotel on the outskirts of the city. Jonathan's project was a turning point. The old hotel, a historic building from the 1920s, needed a delicate blend of restoration and modernization. Inspired by the building's Art Deco features, Rebecca poured herself into the design, discovering a passion for melding vintage accents with contemporary comforts. As she progressed, Jonathan recognized her potential, entrusting her with bigger decisions, from hand-picking materials to consulting on marketing aspects. Quietly but steadily, the hotel renovation transformed from a mere contract to a collaborative partnership. Impressed by her business acumen and eye for detail, Jonathan offered her a stake in the venture. "You're making this place what it is," he said. "I'd be a fool not to bring you on board for the long term." Stunned but thrilled, Rebecca agreed. She became not just an interior designer, but part owner of a soon-to-be upscale boutique hotel. Even as her professional life soared, the rest of Manhattan remained oblivious. The whispers still pegged her as struggling, completely unaware that she was laying the groundwork for a life more opulent than even her time with Thomas had offered. About a year after her divorce, Rebecca found herself with a rare, free evening. She decided to attend a small charity art auction in the East Village, partly for enjoyment and partly to find unique pieces for Jonathan's boutique hotel. To her surprise, the event was well attended by a broad mix of art enthusiasts, celebrities, and local patrons. Rebecca had just placed a bid on a set of hand-painted botanical prints when she heard a familiar voice behind her. Turning, she found herself face to face with none other than Lisa Nguyen, her old college friend who'd been her sounding board through the final days of her marriage. Lisa enveloped Rebecca in a warm hug. "My goodness, you look radiant," she exclaimed. "I've been meaning to call you. How are things?" Over a quick glass of wine at the auction's makeshift lounge, they caught up. Lisa listened, astonished, as Rebecca recounted her design ventures and the near completion of the boutique hotel renovation. "So, you're doing brilliantly?" Lisa asked with a grin. "Everyone in the old circle thinks you're penniless and miserable." Rebecca shrugged, a flicker of amusement on her face. "I've been told as much. Let them think whatever they want." She explained that she preferred the anonymity it allowed her to focus on her projects without unwarranted scrutiny. They parted ways, promising to stay in closer touch. As Rebecca left the auction with a bag of newly acquired prints, a strange sense of satisfaction filled her. She realized she no longer needed high society approval. She was forging her own path, and soon that path would lead to a moment of reckoning for those who believed they knew her fate, Thomas most of all. Tucked away in a serene corner of Westchester County, behind tall marble gates and winding driveways, stood a sprawling estate that Rebecca secretly acquired through a trust set up by Jonathan Maxwell. The property, once belonging to a reclusive heiress, featured classic stone architecture reminiscent of Europe's stately manners, complete with manicured gardens, a reflecting pool, and an ivy-draped veranda. The decision to purchase such a property came after Jonathan and Rebecca's boutique hotel project flourished, earning rave reviews and turning a surprising profit. Jonathan recognized that Rebecca not only possessed an artistic touch, but also an innate business sense. Their partnership extended beyond the single venture. Rebecca found herself receiving dividends that dwarfed her initial divorce settlement. With those earnings, she chose to invest in real estate that could also serve as a personal sanctuary. In many ways, the estate symbolized her newly found independence. Although the house was enormous, she furnished it carefully, elegant but cozy reading nooks, richly colored walls showcasing local artists, and rooms dedicated to her interior design hobbies. She also installed a small studio to experiment with color schemes, textiles, and furniture layout for upcoming projects. Only a handful of trusted friends knew about the house's existence: Samantha Evans, Lisa Nguyen, and of course Jonathan Maxwell. They often joked that it felt like a secret fortress, a place where Rebecca could design, dream, and plan her next moves without the intrusion of paparazzi or the prying eyes of the Harrington set. Little did they realize how soon the estate's gates would swing open to visitors from Rebecca's past. Fate had a way of drawing old connections back together, and it wouldn't be long before the man who assumed she was down on her luck would see the grand expanse of her hidden life with his own astonished eyes. As Rebecca thrived in her private world, Thomas Harrington's life was not as smooth as outward appearances suggested. Sure, he remained a fixture in high society galas, accompanied by a rotating roster of influential business partners and, sometimes, glamorous dates. But behind his tailored suits and practiced smiles, he wrestled with a gnawing emptiness. The Harrington empire was stable, yet growth had stagnated. A risky hotel expansion in Asia had encountered local regulatory hurdles, draining capital and raising eyebrows among the Harrington board members. Thomas found himself under pressure to deliver results as swiftly as possible. Gossip murmured that the golden boy might be losing his touch. Privately, he also harbored guilt about the divorce. He'd told himself Rebecca's exit was best for both of them, but occasionally he wondered if he had undervalued her contributions and trivialized her feelings. Once, after a sleepless night, he looked through old photos on his phone, Rebecca's gentle laughter at a vineyard, the two of them beaming on their honeymoon. The sense of loss struck him harder than he cared to admit. Publicly, however, he maintained a narrative that she was the one who walked away, presumably struggling after leaving the protection of the Harrington name. He convinced himself that she'd taken a small settlement because she didn't want a public fight, and that, given her modest background, she was content with little. The story conveniently absolved him of deeper introspection. Then came the news about a blossoming design star named Rebecca Nicholson, credited with an upscale project in Westchester and a boutique hotel transformation. The name was too close to ignore. Whispers among certain circles hinted that it was Thomas Harrington's ex-wife. Confusion arose. How could she manage such high-end ventures if she was truly struggling? Eventually, these conflicting rumors reached Thomas, weaving a tapestry of lies he had once believed. It wouldn't be long before his curiosity and perhaps a pang of jealousy drew him into a confrontation with the reality of Rebecca's new life. Rebecca's star continued to rise in the design world. Alongside Jonathan Maxwell, she took on multiple boutique properties that needed her refined creative touch. She juggled renovations in Soho, expansions in the Hudson Valley, and even a new venture to modernize a Victorian bed and breakfast in Nantucket. Each project spotlighted her hallmark-style elegance with a hint of warmth and garnered glowing press coverage in lifestyle magazines. This media attention ultimately led to a high-society function dedicated to celebrating innovative architecture and interior design. The event, dubbed Urban Renaissance, promised to bring together real estate tycoons, influential designers, and philanthropic patrons. Unbeknownst to Rebecca, the planning committee was chaired by none other than Camilla, Harrington Thomas's mother, who had become actively involved in cultural fundraising ever since her husband's health declined. Lisa Nguyen, who worked behind the scenes at the event, recognized the potential for awkwardness, but also saw a professional opportunity for Rebecca. So she made a strategic decision. She pushed for Rebecca to be part of the evening's spotlight presentation, showcasing her significant role in reimagining heritage properties. When Rebecca received the gilded invitation, she hesitated. An event hosted by Camilla Harrington? Memories of condescending remarks flooded her. Yet Lisa's encouragement helped. This is your moment. Show them you're more than just someone's ex-wife. You're a force in your own right." Reluctantly, Rebecca agreed to appear. She had no desire to rub her success in anyone's face. But if stepping onto a public stage could open further doors for her business, she was willing to endure any discomfort. And so, with that surprising invitation in hand, she prepared to re-enter a world she'd escaped, uncertain of how her presence would be received or what new tensions might arise between her and the Harringtons. Word of Rebecca's upcoming participation in the Urban Renaissance event spread swiftly, eventually reaching Thomas through a business acquaintance who remarked offhand, "You must be proud that your ex-wife is earning such acclaim." Thomas, taken aback, asked for details. The acquaintance mentioned her name in connection with Jonathan Maxwell's real estate transformations, projects rumored to be quite profitable. Intrigued and perhaps unsettled, Thomas delved into a quiet investigation. He had one of his junior associates look up public records for any business or property holdings under Rebecca Nicholson. To his surprise, he found a limited liability corporation linked to Maxwell Investments and discovered references to the Westchester estate. The property's rumored purchase price dwarfed the small settlement she had accepted during the divorce. Confusion festered. Could she truly afford such a place? Something didn't add up. Fueled by curiosity and perhaps a twinge of wounded pride, Thomas decided to attend the Urban Renaissance event. He reasoned it was an opportunity to explore new alliances, but inwardly he knew it was about seeing Rebecca. A decade earlier, she had been the sweet, unassuming woman who walked away with next to nothing. The notion that she had orchestrated a quiet fortune piqued him. On the night of the event, he arrived at the grand ballroom with a measured air of confidence, even though his nerves churned. He exchanged pleasantries with fellow moguls, nodding politely at the mention of new projects. But beneath the veneer, one question loomed. What had Rebecca become since their divorce? And how on earth had she scaled these heights? When he finally spotted her across the room, poised in a sleek, floor-length gown, surrounded by admirers, Thomas felt his heartbeat stutter. She looked radiant, distinctly at ease in a crowd that once unnerved her. At that moment, he realized he was about to confront a past he'd never fully put to rest. Rebecca had just concluded her talk on sustainable design strategies, a small audience applauding her fresh insights. When Thomas approached, she felt his presence before she saw him. A subtle hush fell over the group, and turning, she found those familiar grey eyes scanning her face. They greeted each other politely, as though exchanging niceties at a minor social event. He congratulated her on the success of her projects with a forced smile. She responded, voice calm, "Thank you, Thomas. It's been an interesting journey." No trace of bitterness, only a measured civility. As the crowd dispersed, he maneuvered closer. Quietly, he ventured, "I had no idea you were working with Jonathan Maxwell. The articles I've seen, they're impressive." His words stumbled slightly. "I'm sorry for not realizing sooner how talented you are," Rebecca exhaled, carefully weighing her response. "We always had different views. I never blamed you for that." She cast a glance around the ballroom, mindful of eavesdroppers. "Anyway, I'm doing fine now." She turned to go, but he reached out, gently touching her elbow. "Wait, could we talk privately?" Her first instinct was to refuse, but a flicker of curiosity prodded her. With a nod, she led him out to a terrace lit by fairy lights that overlooked the city's twinkling skyline. There, in the twilight hush, Thomas finally voiced the question that had haunted him ever since he caught wind of her success. "Rebecca, how did all this happen? The new ventures, the Westchester estate. I thought you were—" He paused, nearly saying struggling, but recoiled at the condescension that word implied. She held his gaze, her expression unreadable. "Not everything in my life was as you assumed," she said softly, "and if you really want answers, you'll have to visit me. See for yourself." Thomas found himself torn. Accepting Rebecca's invitation meant stepping out of his comfort zone, admitting that maybe he'd misread her entire post-divorce life. But he also sensed an underlying challenge in her words, a silent test of whether he was willing to discover truths that might unsettle him. Spurred by a swirl of curiosity, regret, and wounded ego, he agreed. The following week, they arranged for him to visit her Westchester estate. In the days leading up to the appointment, Thomas felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. On one hand, he'd see for himself that she wasn't the broken, needy figure he presumed. On the other hand, he worried that unveiling her newfound success might cast him in an unflattering light, exposing how shallow his assumptions had been. When he mentioned his plan to his mother, Camilla Harrington, she scoffed. "What's the point of groveling before that woman now? She can't possibly have matched the Harrington fortune." Thomas bristled at her tone. Though he once echoed her perspective, a voice inside him argued that maybe Rebecca had every right to stand on her own. His pride warred with a growing empathy he tried to bury. Finally, the appointed day arrived. Thomas drove himself out to Westchester, refusing a chauffeur for once. The changing scenery, skyscrapers fading to rolling hills, felt like a metaphor for a transition in his life he couldn't yet define. He recalled memories of how he and Rebecca once talked about country getaways. They'd never materialized, overshadowed by Harrington obligations and city pomp. By the time he turned onto a winding driveway lined with century-old oaks, his heart pounded. If nothing else, he thought, this will settle my questions. I'll see her world and decide where we stand. While Thomas prepared for his personal pilgrimage to Rebecca's new domain, storm clouds gathered in the Harrington boardroom. Executives raised concerns about the stalled overseas expansion. Investors clamored for reassurance that the brand wouldn't falter, especially if the Harrington name's prestige took a hit. Sitting at the head of a long mahogany table, Thomas listened to them dissect spreadsheets and marketing strategies. He struggled to focus. Lately, his mind drifted to memories of Rebecca's resilience, the quiet times they shared before money and status overshadowed their bond, and the upcoming meeting that both thrilled and unsettled him. Amid the finance talk, one board member, the austere Michael Thompson, pointedly asked Thomas about his leadership priorities. Thomas responded with practiced confidence, but inside he felt a restless dissatisfaction. As they adjourned, he realized that for all the Harrington Empire's might, he felt increasingly hollow. Despite the veneer of wealth and recognition, he lacked the sense of genuine purpose that once shimmered in the earliest days with Rebecca. After the meeting, he retreated to his office. He stared at the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows, his reflection superimposed on the glass. In that fleeting moment, he saw not the triumphant figure he once fancied himself to be, but a man haunted by the absence of authenticity in his life. He glanced at his phone, recalling the hush in Rebecca's voice when she invited him to see her estate. A swirl of guilt and hope pressed on him. For years, he believed that once she left, her trajectory would be downward. Now, a new realization dawned. Perhaps he was the one who'd been stagnating, even while perched atop one of Manhattan's most coveted dynasties. Days before Thomas's Westchester visit, an unexpected visitor arrived at Rebecca's estate, her longtime confidante, Lisa Nguyen. They walked through the sunlit gardens, where Rebecca's design motifs blended seamlessly with nature. Hedges trimmed in precise geometric shapes led to a koi pond set against a backdrop of wisteria vines. The estate's calm energy belied the emotional storm swirling within Rebecca. Lisa had come to share news that a mutual college friend, Henry Caldwell, was in town. Henry, once an aspiring entrepreneur, had become a major success in the tech industry, amassing wealth that rivaled even some Harrington-level fortunes. He'd heard about Rebecca's design ventures and wanted to reconnect, potentially collaborate on philanthropic initiatives. Though excited at Henry's success, Rebecca confessed her worries about Thomas's impending visit. "I can handle seeing him," she said, pacing by the koi pond. "But I'm not sure how I'll feel if he tries to claim some moral high ground or belittle what I've built." Lisa placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. "You've come too far to let him tarnish your accomplishments. Show him the truth, no arrogance, no vindictiveness. If he can't respect your success, that's on him." Reassured, Rebecca guided Lisa through a newly renovated wing of the house, unveiling a private library stocked with design tomes, a writing desk, and a plush reading nook by a bay window. Lisa admired the space, remarking, "You've truly created something remarkable here." Rebecca nodded, a mix of pride and humility washing over her. "I owe a lot to Jonathan Maxwell, but also to people like you who believed in me from the start." Their conversation circled back to Henry Caldwell, whose potential arrival hinted at more collaborative opportunities. As they parted, Rebecca reflected on how life had brought old friends back into her orbit, just as it was returning her ex-husband, placing all these threads on a collision course. On a crisp autumn afternoon, Thomas navigated the final bend of Rebecca's driveway. Tall iron gates parted to reveal an impressive expanse of greenery and a stately mansion peeking through. His pulse quickened with each passing second. How could she afford this, he wondered, wrestling with disbelief. Pulling up to the grand entrance, he noted the intricate stonework and perfectly manicured grounds marked signs of wealth that rivaled the Harrington family home. Even so, everything felt more personal, less ostentatious for the sake of showing off. Rebecca emerged from the main door wearing a simple yet elegant sweater and tailored pants. Her calm smile flickered with a trace of tension. She guided him inside without preamble, leading him through a spacious foyer adorned with tasteful artwork. The faint scent of lilies wafted in the air, courtesy of a centerpiece arrangement on a marble table. As she walked, Thomas observed a swirl of emotions tugging at him. He felt awe at the understated grandeur, confusion over how she'd acquired such means, and guilt for the assumptions he'd harbored. At one point, they passed a row of photographs depicting various design projects, Rebecca's name boldly credited. Realizing her achievements extended far beyond a post-divorce fling with a new lifestyle, a pang of remorse made his chest tighten. They arrived in a drawing room with tall windows overlooking a serene courtyard. Rebecca gestured for Thomas to sit. He complied, swallowing hard. Did I misjudge her all this time? The question pounded in his mind. For the first time since the divorce, he sensed an urgent desire to atone for the ways he might have underestimated and even wronged his ex-wife. Settling into plush armchairs, the ex-spouses faced each other across a polished coffee table. Rebecca offered Thomas tea, a small courtesy reminiscent of simpler days. The steam curling from the porcelain cups provided the only warmth in the otherwise tense air. Thomas cleared his throat. "I don't know where to start," he said quietly, setting his tea down almost immediately. "I'd always assumed you left the marriage with very little. Yet, it's obvious you've built something extraordinary. I'm sorry if I ever implied you couldn't manage on your own." Rebecca studied him for a long moment, recalling the arrogance he once displayed, but she saw genuine regret in his eyes. "I appreciate that," she replied. "I never sought revenge or tried to flaunt my success. I just wanted to live on my own terms." A companionable silence stretched. Tentatively, Thomas asked about the origin of her fortune. Rebecca spoke briefly about her collaboration with Jonathan Maxwell, her design firm's growth, and the shrewd investments that followed. He listened intently, nodding as puzzle pieces fell into place. The woman he once believed was unsophisticated had outmaneuvered even the staid Harrington family in business acumen. In a surprising twist, the conversation turned to the boutique hotel Thomas planned to open in Europe. Struggling with local regulatory hurdles, he faced potential losses. On impulse, he asked if she'd offer any consulting insight purely from a design perspective or even from a vantage point of forging alliances with philanthropic organizations. Rebecca blinked at the request. Could they truly collaborate after so much history? But a part of her recognized they'd both changed. Maybe, she said, voice cautious. If it benefits the project and if we maintain professional boundaries, thus an unlikely alliance was born. The once divided couple might find themselves working side by side, forging a new chapter neither had seen coming. The news of Thomas and Rebecca's potential collaboration rippled through their social circles. Camilla Harrington, upon hearing that her son had met with his ex-wife, bristled. She summoned Thomas to the family mansion, determined to set him straight. Over dinner in a chandelier-lit dining room, she grilled him about his intentions, her tone dripping with disapproval. "Thomas, you're meddling with a woman who walked away from this family," she admonished. "Remember how she scorned our name? Don't lower yourself by seeking her help," Thomas sighed. "Mother, the divorce was mutual, and I never said she scorned us, only that our worlds didn't align. Besides, if there's a way for our project to benefit from her expertise, why shouldn't we consider it?" Camilla scoffed. "There are more suitable designers out there. I worry she's only interested in your resources." His jaw tightened. "Actually, she has resources of her own, and they might rival ours." He didn't elaborate on the scale of her estate, but the mention was enough to make Camilla's eyes widen momentarily. She tried to mask her surprise, returning to her usual poise. The possibility that Rebecca was wealthier than they presumed undermined her narrative that the woman was a gold digger. After dinner, Thomas retreated to his old bedroom to gather some files and reflect. The mansion's corridors felt cold, burdened by the weight of tradition and his mother's meddling. The more time he spent with the Harringtons, the more he realized how stifling their environment must have been for Rebecca. A pang of empathy for his ex-wife swelled, reinforcing his determination to maintain a respectful partnership with her, no matter how many eyebrows it raised among the influential Harrington clan. Meanwhile, Rebecca found her circle buzzing with curiosity over her renewed contact with Thomas. Lisa Ungien, who heard bits of the story, delicately probed during their weekly brunch. "So, you're potentially consulting on his project? Are you sure that's a good idea?" Rebecca sipped her cappuccino, wincing at the swirl of conflicting emotions inside her. "I'm not certain," she admitted, "but part of me wants to prove I'm capable of standing as his equal now. He used to overshadow me, whether he intended to or not." "That's a fair motivation," Lisa replied gently, "but be cautious. You don't want old wounds reopening, especially if the Harrington family resents you." Rebecca nodded. She was well aware that forging a partnership with Thomas might reignite tensions with Camilla or others from that circle. Yet she felt a sense of calm in charting her own course this time. No illusions, no subservience. If the collaboration advanced, she would set clear boundaries. If Thomas or his mother tried to patronize her, she would walk away. Around the same time, Jonathan Maxwell caught wind of the potential alliance. Concerned for her emotional well-being, he phoned her. "Rebecca, you've soared since the divorce. Don't let anything weigh you down. If you need a second opinion on any deals with the Harrington Group, I'm here." She reassured him that she wouldn't make hasty choices. Regardless, the possibility of working with Thomas acted as a test of allegiances for her close friends, and for the Harrington clan. Each step forward threatened to unravel carefully maintained illusions and reveal the true measure of loyalties in their complicated world. Thomas found himself visiting Rebecca's estate with increasing frequency initially to discuss design proposals for his European hotel, but gradually it evolved into unexpected moments of personal candor. Their meetings took place in her bright, airy library or strolling across the estate gardens. Each time, he discovered new facets of the life she had built, One afternoon, after hours spent poring over architectural sketches, they paused for tea on the veranda. Watching sunlight dance on a nearby fountain, Thomas confided in a low voice, "My father's health is failing. He was always the strong figure in the family, the one I admired. Now, I'm not sure how to handle the empire alone." Rebecca studied the sorrow in his gaze. She remembered how Gregory Harrington used to speak passionately about philanthropic endeavors, disappointed whenever Thomas seemed more interested in quick expansions. "He was proud of you, she offered gently. "He always said you had the business acumen to modernize the empire." Thomas managed a wan smile. "I wish I could believe that. Lately, I feel I've accomplished nothing meaningful, just expansions and acquisitions." The confession hung in the air, revealing a vulnerability she'd rarely seen in him. She placed a sympathetic hand on his. "It's not too late to find meaning. Look at me, I had to lose everything to realize what I truly wanted." Their conversation drifted, touching on old memories of traveling to the Amalfi Coast, the joy of cooking simple meals in their penthouse's open-plan kitchen. Thomas eventually exhaled a shaky breath. "I never apologized for how I treated you, for how shallow I was. I'm sorry." Rebecca's eyes glistened, her heart stirred by the honesty she once craved. "I accept your apology," she said softly, uncertain whether this signaled a new beginning or simply a fleeting moment of honesty in a lonely man's life. As the weeks of collaboration rolled on, the dynamic between Thomas and Rebecca took a surprising turn. Their partnership for the European hotel project progressed smoothly. He admired her keen eye for detail, her practical suggestions that saved time and money, and her flair for creating unique ambience. In turn, she recognized a different side to him, one more introspective and receptive than the man she had divorced. In unguarded moments, a quiet yearning flickered. Rebecca felt it when Thomas gently guided her hand to show her a blueprint, his touch lingering longer than necessary. Thomas sensed it when he caught a whiff of her familiar perfume, memories of nights once shared washing over him. Neither openly acknowledged it, yet the tension in the air was palpable. They continued their open-air meetings on her estate's grounds, forging a rapport that extended beyond strict business. They shared laughter, recalling comedic mishaps from their marriage, like the time they attempted to re-tile the bathroom themselves, turning the penthouse into a comedic disaster zone. For fleeting instances, they felt like old friends, rediscovering each other's essence. Such closeness brought risks. Thomas occasionally wrestled with guilt about whether exploring these emotions betrayed the memory of all the pain they had caused each other. Rebecca, similarly, felt torn. She cherished her autonomy and feared her heart might be too fragile to survive another heartbreak at the hands of the Harrington clan. Still, desire, once reawakened, rarely recedes easily. Unspoken, it lingered in every stolen glance, each shared smile. Their future teetered on a precipice. Would they remain business allies, revert to a cold distance, or venture into the risky territory of renewed romance? Only time and a confrontation with the past would decide. Jonathan Maxwell had watched the evolving situation with guarded interest. One evening, he requested a private dinner with Rebecca, suggesting they meet at an upscale restaurant in Midtown. Over candlelight, they discussed the boutique hotel's continued success, as well as the philanthropic expansions they were planning. Finally, Jonathan leaned forward. "Rebecca," he said quietly, swirling his wineglass, "I can see Thomas Harrington is back in your orbit. I don't judge that, but I need to ensure your business remains protected. I've heard from certain sources that the Harrington board might attempt a merger or partnership that could overshadow your control." She felt a twinge of alarm. "I never intended to hand over any stake in my projects to the Harrington Group. Our arrangement for the European hotel is purely design consultation." Jonathan nodded. I believe you, but you must remain vigilant. If the Harrington family sees your partnership as a chance to reclaim you or your resources, they might push for more than you're comfortable giving. Rebecca bit her lip. She knew Jonathan meant well. The Harrington name commanded power, and even if Thomas's intentions were genuine, corporate wheels could grind mercilessly. I appreciate the warning, she responded. I won't allow them to control my enterprises. Satisfied, Jonathan changed the topic to more pleasant matters, but the conversation weighed on Rebecca long after dinner ended. The next day, she pored over legal documents, ensuring her estate and design firm had robust protections. She might be forging a cautious truce with Thomas personally, but she wasn't naive. She recognized that money and influence could warp even genuine intentions, leaving her vulnerable if she wasn't careful. It seemed the deeper she treaded into the Harrington sphere, the more entangled she risked becoming. Nonetheless, she refused to retreat. If her fortune and achievements were to be unraveled, it wouldn't be without a fight. One crisp evening, with the European hotel project nearing a crucial decision stage, Thomas arrived at Rebecca's Westchester estate for what they'd planned as a final comprehensive review. Under a sky streaked with orange and pink, the two strolled through the manicured garden paths, discussing final design elements. They ended up on a marble terrace overlooking a glimmering pond. The last rays of sunlight danced on the water. Leaning against the balustrade, Thomas hesitated, then spoke. I can't keep ignoring the elephant in the room. We're working well together, but I sense we're also walking a fine line between business and something else. Rebecca nodded, heart pounding. She stared at the reflection of the sunset in the pond. I'd be lying if I said I felt nothing, she admitted, but I left our marriage for a reason. I can't go through that heartbreak again. He turned to face her, sincerity etched in his expression. I understand, but I also realize how much I undervalued you, your ideas, your independence. I won't pretend I've magically transformed, but I do know I don't want to lose you again. A hush fell, the evening breeze rustling nearby trees. Rebecca's mind whirled. Over the past year, she had built an identity separate from him. She overcame his family's belittling attitudes, found success on her own, and learned to stand tall. Could she risk letting him back into her life, both personally and professionally? She drew a shaky breath. I need time, Thomas. We both do. Maybe we continue as partners on this project, see how we manage, and if we can truly respect each other. That was her final word for the night, a cautious proposition offering neither complete rejection nor blind acceptance. He exhaled, relief mingled with trepidation. I'll accept that, he said softly, hoping fate would give them both the second chance they might deserve. The next few weeks felt like a test. Thomas and Rebecca rolled out final design tweaks for the European hotel, ensuring that every detail aligned with local cultural preferences and sustainable practices. The synergy they displayed impressed the Harrington board, albeit stirring curiosity about why Thomas credited so much of the concept to Rebecca Nicholson Designs. Meanwhile, Camilla Harrington seethed. She recognized that Thomas's frequent trips to Westchester signaled more than just professional dealings. She cornered him in the Harrington mansion's grand foyer, cautioning him that re-involving himself with that woman could undermine their family brand. Thomas, surprisingly firm, responded that the partnership was beneficial for the business, and perhaps for him personally. Unbeknownst to them, tabloids caught wind of private meetings between Thomas and his ex-wife. Rumors exploded. Some speculated about a romantic rekindling. Others suggested a bitter confrontation. In truth, the headlines accomplished little except fueling public curiosity. In the midst of the swirling speculation, the final contracts for the European hotel arrived. Rebecca and Thomas found themselves co-signing an agreement that gave her design firm a formal seat at the table, complete with profit-sharing clauses. The magnitude of the financial arrangement dwarfed the original divorce settlement, ironically weaving her life back into the Harrington Empire's sphere of influence. On a quiet evening, after all the documents were signed, they sat in a study at the estate. Thomas gazed at Rebecca, seeing the woman he married, but also a figure far stronger, more confident. She noted the uncertainty in his eyes, aware that his internal battles continued. Neither said a word, but the moment glowed with a fragile sense of redemption. Or was it merely the calm before an oncoming storm? The stage was set for a culminating decision, whether they'd find a new equilibrium or revert to the patterns that once shattered them. The final confrontation loomed, carrying the weight of old regrets and new possibilities. The unveiling of Thomas and Rebecca's European hotel project arrived in grand style. Media outlets, local dignitaries, and high-profile partners attended the opening ceremony, applauding the cutting-edge design that harmonized old-world charm with contemporary luxury. For the first time in years, Thomas and Rebecca stood together on a public stage, albeit more as collaborators than as a couple. During the gala, reporters swarmed them with questions. One brave journalist asked if the two were reconciling romantically. Rebecca smiled diplomatically, responding, "We're celebrating a professional success, leaving the rest to speculation." Thomas added that they were proud of their shared vision. Neither confirmed nor denied any personal entanglement, leaving tabloids to spin endless theories. Behind the scenes, Jonathan Maxwell extended his congratulations, praising Rebecca for her visionary ideas and commending Thomas for bridging the Harrington brand with forward-thinking design. Even the previously skeptical Harrington board members nodded in approval. The project's initial bookings suggested a lucrative outcome. An impressed hush spread among them. Perhaps the synergy between Thomas and Rebecca was genuinely beneficial, both financially and, perhaps personally. In a quiet corner of the lavish lounge, the two shared a toast. Champagne flutes clinked softly. Thomas, fighting a surge of emotion, murmured, "I owe you more than a thank you. You've shown me what we could have been, and maybe still can be." Rebecca studied him, her eyes revealing layers of caution. She wasn't sure if reviving a romance was wise, but the bond they shared, this unspoken understanding, felt undeniable. "We both changed," she said. "We can't just pretend the past never happened." "But I believe in second chances, if they're earned." He nodded gravely, acknowledging the mountain of trust he'd need to rebuild. The memory of how he once dismissed her talents, the painful divorce those scars couldn't vanish overnight. Yet her presence now felt less like a reminder of failure and more like a symbol of growth, both for him and for her. As the gala ended and the lights dimmed, Thomas escorted Rebecca out of the venue. Paparazzi snapped photos from a distance, capturing the fleeting moment they walked side by side. She paused at her car, turning to offer him a soft smile. "I'm leaving tomorrow for the Westchester estate. You're welcome to visit any time, but only if you come as an equal, not as Harrington heir expecting me to yield." He took her hand, a tremor of sincerity passing through him. "I'd want nothing less," he replied. And so they parted, stepping into the next phase of their lives. What began as an assumption about a struggling ex-wife concluded with the shocking revelation of her success and the potential for redefined love. For all their fraught history, they both sensed that a new chapter awaited, one forged by respect and a mutual acceptance of the people they had become. Only time would reveal whether this fresh start would yield the happiness that once eluded them. But for now, hope shimmered on the horizon. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of broken vows, hidden resilience, and surprising reunions. Rebecca and Thomas Harrington's story proves that assumptions can be dangerously deceptive and that one person's rags might secretly mask remarkable riches. Through heartbreak and rediscovery, they both learned the importance of genuine self-worth and realized that true redemption often requires an unflinching look at one's own failings. If you found this dramatic tale inspiring, please like the video, share it with friends who love a good redemption arc, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that delve into the complexities of relationships, ambition, and healing. Your support helps us create compelling narratives that affirm the power of resilience. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes, the greatest twists in life unfold when we dare to see beyond the illusions we once believed.